In September 1944, the U.S. Army was conducting operations in eastern France, where they surrounded a fortified German stronghold. This was an ancient fortress, built centuries ago, with thick and solid stone walls capable of withstanding numerous attacks. The fortress was guarded by heavy artillery and machine guns positioned in every direction, making access extremely difficult. Inside, there were about 1,500 German soldiers, commanded by an officer known for his fierce determination and unwavering loyalty. This officer, famous for his resolve to protect his position, had declared he would never surrender. Given this context, the U.S. Army faced a significant challenge in eliminating this threat and continuing their advance. The German officer, upon receiving the surrender offer from the U.S. forces, made a defiant statement. He refused to surrender and declared that if the Americans wanted to capture the fortress, Patton would have to kill him first. This declaration was not just a simple rejection, but a heroic and challenging statement. It was a way to inspire his soldiers, making them feel proud of their determination to fight. At the same time, it was a strategy to intimidate the enemy, showing that he was willing to sacrifice his life rather than accept defeat. This challenge set up a tense situation, where there was no room for negotiation, only the decision to fight to the end. Patton, upon receiving the German officer's challenge, responded immediately with a brief but decisive reply. "I can arrange that." This response not only showed his determination, but also highlighted his strategic vision. Patton was not concerned with prolonging the battle or creating a lengthy siege. Instead, he decided to launch a swift and effective campaign, focusing on destroying key defensive points in the shortest time possible. Patton's goal was to deny the Germans any opportunity for prolonged defense, opting instead for a powerful, well-organized strike that would end quickly, minimizing American casualties. The fortress occupied by the German forces was not only structurally strong, but also located in a strategically important position. Its thick stone walls and fortified defenses made direct assault a significant challenge. However, Patton understood that this fortress could not be left behind, as it sat on a crucial supply route for the U.S. Army. If the Germans controlled it, the supply lines would be disrupted, delaying the progress of the campaign. While some commanders might have chosen to bypass the fortress to continue operations elsewhere, Patton did not accept this. He decided to eliminate this threat immediately. Instead of allowing the situation to drag on and continue endangering the supply lines, Patton opted for a decisive solution, ordering the attack and complete encirclement of the fortress to eliminate any delays in the U.S. Army's advance. This decision not only demonstrated Patton's decisiveness, but also highlighted his strategic foresight in securing vital supply routes and ensuring a quick victory. Patton always believed that surrender was the most effective solution before resorting to bloodshed. Before using force, he prioritized offering surrender in the hope of resolving the situation without costing lives on either side. He understood that a prolonged battle would not only result in significant losses, but also delay the progress of the campaign. Therefore, surrender helped save time and protect the lives of soldiers, avoiding unnecessary extended conflicts. Patton's offer of surrender was not a sign of mercy, but a strategy to achieve the objective quickly and efficiently. When the surrender offer was made, the German officer not only rejected it, but also issued a defiant challenge. He declared that if Patton wanted to capture the fortress, he would have to kill him first. This was not just a simple rejection, but a strong statement, meant to boost the morale of his troops and demonstrate his unwavering resolve to not surrender to the enemy. The challenge created a tense situation, highlighting the officer's determination and the spirit of resistance within his ranks. However, Patton's response was entirely different. Rather than becoming angry or frustrated by the challenge, he saw it as an opportunity to execute the strategy he had already planned. Patton was not swayed by emotions. Instead, he immediately recognized that this challenge was simply a catalyst to move forward with his decisive and uncompromising campaign. For Patton, this was the moment to show that his words and actions were never just threats, but always backed by practical and effective execution. Patton immediately ordered the implementation of a complete encirclement of the fortress. He instructed the U.S. forces to establish a tight blockade, preventing anyone from entering or leaving, effectively cutting off all communication and supplies to the German forces. One of the critical elements of this strategy was halting the supply of water and food, leaving the German soldiers unable to sustain themselves for an extended period inside the fortress. This not only weakened their morale, but also put tremendous pressure on their remaining resources. At the same time, Patton ordered precise artillery strikes, not a random bombardment, but targeted attacks aimed at critical defensive structures. Heavy artillery was deployed to target key points such as the stone walls, ammunition storage, and strategic positions within the fortress. Each shot was to be precise, aimed not only at destroying the defensive structures but also creating significant breaches, forcing the German forces to face the collapse of their once-thought impregnable defenses. This was part of a well-organized professional assault strategy designed to secure a swift victory while minimizing casualties for the U.S. forces. Patton understood that war was not only a physical confrontation, but also a psychological battle. He knew that if the German forces felt completely surrounded with no escape, their morale would be weakened. Therefore, one of his key strategic moves was to use loudspeakers to broadcast messages to the Germans, informing them of the upcoming attacks. These announcements were not just simple warnings. They were a psychological tactic designed to make the Germans realize that there was no way out of this fight. They would face certain destruction, and there would be no safe place within the fortress. The use of loudspeakers not only threatened the German forces, but also created instability and doubt among them. As the soldiers clearly heard what was coming, fear and anxiety began to spread. Weaker soldiers started to question the decision to continue fighting, knowing that death was inevitable. This undermined the fighting spirit of the Germans, creating distraction and instability within their ranks, making it easier for the American forces to break through and overpower them. The attack began at dawn, with the first light of day casting a tense and decisive atmosphere. The German forces had hours to reflect on their fate, as loudspeaker broadcasts warning of the upcoming strikes had echoed through the walls of the fortress. A sense of anxiety and uncertainty spread throughout the soldiers, who now knew there was no escape from the impending battle. The decision to launch the attack at dawn was not only a tactical move but also a deeply psychological one. Patton wanted the Germans to spend the entire night in fear and doubt before facing the fury of the American forces. When the attack commenced, Patton deployed 155mm artillery pieces, powerful, long-range guns that accurately targeted the weak points in the fortress's defensive system. Each shot was carefully aimed at critical targets, not only to weaken the thick stone walls, but also to destroy defensive positions and expose the Germans' vulnerabilities. Every artillery shell was meticulously calibrated to strike specific targets, from defensive artillery to ammunition storage and command posts. Additionally, Patton deployed P-47 Thunderbolt bombers, which dropped 500-pound bombs with precision on key targets. These planes did not engage in widespread carpet bombing but focused their strikes on vital structures such as the German command posts and ammunition depots. This tactical approach caused significant damage to the Germans while disrupting their defensive system, creating crucial breaches for the subsequent infantry assault. These precise strikes showcased Patton's careful preparation and the coordinated efforts of his forces, ensuring that there was no room for error in his strategy. The U.S. attack was relentless and uncompromising, resembling a storm that destroyed everything in its path. The 155mm artillery continued to fire, each shot accurately targeting key defensive structures, causing large breaches to appear in the fortress's stone walls. With each artillery strike, the walls were not only damaged but also exposed the German positions, forcing them to face direct attacks from all sides. The airstrikes by P-47 Thunderbolt bombers intensified the assault, with 500-pound bombs hitting ammunition depots, causing violent explosions that shook the entire fortress. The force of these attacks rendered the German resistance ineffective, and the defensive positions were quickly incapacitated. With every step forward, the morale of the German soldiers dwindled. This unforgiving assault not only destroyed the defenses, but also shattered the will of the German soldiers, who had previously held out against the siege. As the fortress crumbled and there was no place left to hide, many German soldiers began to surrender. Groups of soldiers, once determined to resist, now realized that defeat was inevitable. The remaining soldiers started to lay down their weapons, surrendering to the U.S. forces, while their commanders tried to maintain discipline, but the resistance had lost all meaning. Ultimately, with the complete defeat of the German defensive forces, the fortress fell into American hands, proving that the power of strategy and organized attack had completely overwhelmed the Germans. After the precise artillery and airstrikes, the U.S. infantry assault officially began. U.S. infantry forces entered the fortress from multiple directions, taking advantage of the breaches created in the walls and defensive structures. The American soldiers moved in an organized manner, not only destroying the remaining defensive positions, but also quickly seizing key strategic points, such as ammunition depots, command posts, and important defense stations. The U.S. troops used modern weaponry and continuous assault tactics, leaving no opportunity for the Germans to resist. The capture of each area within the fortress was carried out in a planned and decisive manner, ensuring that no further resistance could hinder the American advance. As the U.S. forces moved deeper into the fortress, the German forces quickly disintegrated. After the relentless and coordinated attacks, the German commanders could no longer organize or maintain their forces. The systematic assault by the American army created an unbearable pressure on the Germans. The German soldiers, now without leadership and disorganized, began to surrender in groups. They had lost the will to fight and realized that the war was over. The German units became scattered, no longer coordinated, and the U.S. forces continued their march to final victory. Ultimately, the battle ended swiftly and effectively, with the German forces completely collapsing and the fortress falling into American hands, proving that a rapid, well-organized attack had completely overwhelmed the enemy. The battle came to an end when the German officer, who had vowed never to surrender, finally faced his fate. As American forces infiltrated his command bunker, the officer, with only a few loyal soldiers left, desperately attempted to resist. However, his resistance did not last long. When the U.S. troops stormed in, he drew his pistol and tried to fight back, but was shot dead immediately. The death of the German officer was not dramatic or heroic, but rather a cold and professional end in line with Patton's strategy to eliminate the target efficiently and quickly. Following the officer's death, the battle ended swiftly. The remaining German soldiers, now without leadership, began to surrender. The U.S. forces quickly organized the capture of thousands of German soldiers who had given up the fight, realizing that the situation was irreversible. The German soldiers had no reason to continue fighting when they saw their commander was dead and the rest of the defensive positions had completely collapsed. The American troops swiftly took control, ensuring that the battle was over with no further resistance. With the capture of thousands of German soldiers, the U.S. victory not only demonstrated military dominance, but also showcased the effectiveness of a well-organized and decisive assault strategy. The attack on the fortress not only resulted in a military victory, but also had significant strategic implications. The quick elimination of the German forces and the fact that the battle did not drag on allowed the U.S. Army to save valuable time and resources, ensuring there were no major obstacles in their advance. Had the battle been prolonged or faced with stronger defenses, the American campaign could have encountered serious difficulties, delaying strategic objectives. However, through a decisive and swift attack strategy, Patton eliminated a major threat without losing too much time. This not only demonstrated Patton's strategic brilliance, but also highlighted the importance of quickly neutralizing threats to maintain momentum in the war. By swiftly dealing with this fortress, Patton was able to keep his forces moving forward without letting the threat slow down the larger plan. Thanks to his rapid attack strategy, Patton was able to continue the advance without significant interruption, maintaining the initiative and moving toward victory. The lesson from Patton is clear. He did not negotiate with challenges, but instead did exactly what the challenger requested. When the German officer challenged Patton with the statement, "If you want this fortress, you'll have to kill me," Patton did not waste time trying to persuade or negotiate. Instead, he immediately did exactly what the officer had requested. He launched an attack and eliminated the threat efficiently. Patton understood that when someone has already decided not to surrender and wants to fight to the end, there is no reason to continue negotiations. Time is a critical factor in war, and Patton didn't allow himself to be caught up in futile discussions. This story also highlights the difference in Patton's leadership style. He never wasted time in long discussions with those who had already decided not to change. Instead, he focused on decisive action, making quick and bold decisions. Patton recognized that when facing challengers, not negotiating and taking timely action were necessary to achieve swift and effective victory. This is an important lesson in leadership. Decisiveness and the ability to act quickly are key elements in not wasting time and achieving goals. Patton's relentless assault had a profound psychological impact on the German forces. After witnessing the devastation caused by the American troops and the death of the German officer, the remaining soldiers realized that refusing to surrender would not only lead to their own demise, but also the destruction of their comrades. The Germans learned that if they refused to surrender, they would face a powerful and uncompromising strategy from Patton. He did not just threaten, but followed through with exactly what he had declared, sending a clear message that with Patton, there was no room for challenge or negotiation. This made German commanders, who may have previously doubted surrendering, understand that refusing to surrender would come at the cost of death and significant loss. The importance of accepting surrender was clearly demonstrated in this attack. Refusing to surrender not only brought death to the officers and soldiers, but also caused immense damage to the German units. Soldiers who surrendered, despite the difficult circumstances, had the chance to survive and be treated humanely under the Geneva Convention. On the other hand, refusing to surrender led to senseless death and irreparable losses. This message was strongly conveyed, not only among the soldiers within the fortress, but also throughout the German forces, affirming that with Patton, refusing to surrender was never a wise choice. The story of the assault on the fortress not only raises questions about military strategy, but also offers an important lesson about leadership and responsibility. One key question that arises is whether Patton should have attempted to persuade the German officer to surrender, rather than carrying out exactly what the officer had challenged him to do. Perhaps some other commanders would have chosen a more peaceful approach, trying to convince the officer to avoid unnecessary death. However, Patton opted for decisive action, refusing to negotiate with a challenge. Was it the right choice for the officer to be killed, or was it his responsibility for choosing to fight to the death, knowing that death was inevitable? The leadership lesson from this battle is clear. Leadership is not only about military strategy, but also about making strong, responsible decisions. Leadership is not always easy and can be filled with contradictions. Sometimes decisions must be made that come with serious consequences. Patton was not just an exceptional strategist, but also a decisive leader, knowing when to act quickly and effectively to protect a greater objective. This assault highlights the importance of decisiveness in leadership, while also emphasizing that every decision carries responsibility and its consequences. In the end, this story raises an important question about leadership and strategy. Should Patton have tried to persuade the German officer to surrender instead of carrying out exactly what he was challenged to do? We see that Patton's decision not only led to victory, but also raised ethical and leadership consequences. Now, we'd like to hear your thoughts. What do you think about Patton's decision? Was there another approach he could have taken to avoid the unnecessary death of the German officer? Share your perspective in the comments below this video. Your participation in the discussion will help us all reflect and uncover deeper lessons about leadership, strategy, and responsibility.